Another question is, how can we ensure that we spend quality time together as a family during the holidays? What activities or experiences do we want to prioritize?
Hear the sleigh bells, it's Christmas. Hear the sleigh bells, it's Christmas.
Okay. Well. Ooh, that was a short intro. Well, thank you, Chris. That was very short. Producer Chris.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, how do you do?
I had all kinds of thoughts running through my brain because I'm not a big fan of Christmas music. So I was about to attack producer Chris for playing Christmas music.
Why don't you like Christmas music?
I don't know.
I thought it was you didn't like Christmas music before Thanksgiving,
Well,
but
that's
you
for
don't
sure
like Christmas
true.
music even after Thanksgiving? In December?
There was an Instagram thing that our church worship team posted the other day.
Okay.
When do you start listening to Christmas music?
Yeah.
And my comment was December 24th, but then I'm super into it. so I like it.
That narrow window.
Yes. I want 24 hours of awesome
Like
Christmas
full-fledged,
music.
not like in the department store
Yes.
starting in October.
Yes. And here we are in the first week of December, barely. Or what is it? No,
Yeah,
it's the 27th.
end of November.
End of November.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
So, yeah, this is an okay time. It's early. Anyway.
What about for Christmas ornaments? Like our little...
Is that an ornament?
That's the
it's
woody.
an ornament.
Oh, it's an
Yeah, it's hanging on a
ornament.
tree,
Oh,
just
that's
zoomed
so
in.
cute.
I thought that was
love
just.
it.
I thought that
love
was
it
just a
all.
super blurry picture, and I was like, okay, I guess. I don't know what's in these days.
I know,
Maybe
right?
blurry art was in. That's a Christmas ornament.
Does it look
Yeah,
like
well...
Those of you listening, not watching, are
Yeah.
in our studio. We have a
TV screen,
What, as we now know, is a Christmas ornament
car.
image, like a Woody surf car
Yeah.
ornament. Thank you. That
That's from our
helps.
tree. We have a bunch of surf. You know, I'm a surfer, and I have a lot of surf type ornaments, and that's as I zoomed in on. one.
There you go.
So okay, I'm so confused. Okay, so it's an ornament from your tree.
Because
Is it-
he's a
is it-
surfer.
Well, that's a whole different conversation. Is the ornament all fuzzy like that, or did you just take a really cruddy
A bad
picture?
picture?
I think it's the glasses. You need to. When's the last time you
he's
got
messing
those
with
checked?
you,
Dude, I'm
Kurt.
telling
He's
you,
messing with you so
It's
bad.
fuzzy. Anyway, as far as decorating, I put off decorating until my wife says, Kurt, I need the house, like she'll decorate the
Yeah.
inside, which again, for me, like the week before Christmas is totally fine.
Yeah.
And she'll eventually say, Kurt, tonight.
Today's the day.
You have to put the lights up outside. You have to hang that. And I'm just, oh gosh, okay. One year when our kids were little, they'll still talk about it. They probably get counseling about it, or it comes up in counseling. But we had this fake ficus plant, fake ficus tree in our house.
Yeah.
And one year, I convinced my wife, let's just decorate the ficus tree. We don't need to.
Yeah.
Put
We
the
don't
lights
need-
up.
Oh yeah, it was. Kids were devastated. Doug and Kathy Fields came over our house for something, and Kathy Fields, who's they for those of you who don't know, they're friends, but they're used to be pastors at our church, or he did. She was devastated,
About
completely devastated that I would decorate a ficus tree and not have a Christmas tree.
And not have a Christmas
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah.
My ideal is
People
like to carve.
take their decorations very seriously.
They do. I want to carve a Christmas tree out of plywood, paint it, decorate it, do all the things, make it, and just have a one-dimensional. I just take it out of the rafters and prop
then
it
you
against,
never have to do
prop it
anything
against
each
the
year.
wall every year.
What?
It's artsy. It's cool.
What happened to you?
Should we unpack this on this podcast?
I'm like the
Grinch. The
Ebenezer
decorating Grinch.
Scrooge without the money. I'm more like the Grinch.
Yeah.
I don't think the Grinch had any money. I'm the Grinch. All right, we're back.
All right. On that note,
so that's a great lead in to what we're going
Today.
to talk about for the next 3 episodes.
Yes.
And apparently,
we
Grace,
need to do.
I
you need
should
to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I need to listen because we're talking all about
Yes. Preparing for the Christmas season.
Preparing.
Parenting. Our 3-episode season is going to be talking about parenting during Christmas time.
Yes.
We really want to, just dive into the subject as we head into Christmas. How do we do this whole parenting thing? Because there's a lot going on.
stressful time.
It's a stressful time.
Yep.
It's a magical time. It's a stressful
Yep.
time. It's everything in between. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time just focusing on parenting specifically during the season, which is a really unique season. And I would say the holiday that is probably the most involved in all aspects of society, whether it's like family, decor, economy, businesses, all of that stuff. It's super involved. Activities, gatherings, parties.
And then you add
money.
onto all that stress, go outside, 57-year-old man, and climb this 3-story tall rickety ladder and reach farther than you should to hang up some Christmas lights. That adds to the stress level.
You can relate to it. You can relate to the need for the series.
I'm speaking on behalf of a friend of mine who
Just a friend.
Yeah. So, okay, Grace. Today
we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about preparing your family. So parenting during the Christmas season, and we're going to kick off this series with the thought of parenting or preparing for the season. And so do you want to just jump into our thoughts?
Yeah, let's just jump in. And part of the reason we thought this was a good topic is, and this isn't necessarily one of my thoughts per se, but I think one of the stressors, depending on how you're wired as a parent, as a person, but one of the stressors of Christmas is like the urgency.
Yeah.
And again, I'm talking to myself, right? One of the reasons I stress out hanging decorations is because I postpone as long as I can. And then there's this urgency of, because I know I've been married for 32 years. I know I'm going to decorate. It's coming.
Yes.
It's coming. I could figure out a way to do it in a less stressful, urgent manner.
Right.
But I don't.
Yeah.
And so that it just cranks up the urgency. And I think sometimes maybe for us parents, because life is busy for most parents before you add on the Christmas season.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so the topic today is, what if we just gave it a little bit more forethought?
Yes.
To think through how can you do a little bit ahead of time? What are some things to think about as you enter into the early stages? Because this episode, I mean, it airs in a couple days, so it'll be November 27th, 28th, something like that. I mean, we still have a month almost till Christmas.
Yeah.
So this
is perfect timing to be thinking about
There's still a runway.
Yes.
So that's what today's all about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll kick it off. As we're talking about preparation, one of the things I wanted to propose to parents is to take this time, if you're listening to this podcast, and in that space where you're just hearing these words, this is the perfect time to just embrace the power of preparation. So this episode is all about preparation, but I think the word prepare can draw, like you were saying, different reactions from people. There are some people who will be like, yes, yes, and yes.
They prepare for everything.
They prepare for everything. This is up their alley. They have checklists for what checklists they're going to write. It's checklists on checklists. But for other people, that might be just so stressful because I'm already busy. I'm already stressed. I already have so much going on. If you tell me prepare now for Christmas, all you're doing is adding on to my to-do list, and I feel that pressure. And when you feel pressure, you feel stressed. But what I want to suggest is that preparing for Christmas is not just about having a perfect to-do list or preparing a to-do list to make Christmas perfect.
Right.
In this kind of maybe some image of a perfect holiday that might be conjured up when we say prepare for Christmas. So for me, when I think about preparing for Christmas as a parent, it's really not about the image and the lights and the gifts and getting everything into this picture perfect image. And it's not about the standard you need to achieve. You need to prepare so that you could have the perfect standard Christmas image. For me, though, I think preparation is so, so important because it's about creating space for us as parents to really think about what's important to us during this Christmas season, so that you don't miss that thing that is important to you.
Right.
And so, I mean, here's the thing that I've been thinking about recently that really just shapes how I approach things is that what we value doesn't automatically happen.
Right.
And that might seem like maybe to some a real obvious statement, but to me it wasn't. To me, I think subliminally, I just thought we do what we value, because doesn't that make sense? Why would we act inconsistent to our values? That
Right.
I wouldn't just assume that we would be doing that.
Right.
But in reality, if we are not intentional, it is very easy to live a life inconsistent with our values.
Yep.
It made me think about when I was younger. I remember this scene, and it's happened multiple times, and I'm sure people could relate, where your parents are at the beach, you're at the beach hanging out with your family, you have a station, towels, maybe an umbrella, chair set up, and you go down and the water is warm enough, so you're playing in the water. And I remember playing, and just like splashing with my younger sister. And then it was like, okay, let's go back to our towels. And I looked up at the shore, and I was like, what? It looked completely different. And what I didn't realize was within the 10 minutes I was playing, the tide had just shifted me down.
Yep.
And I was really, really far
Yep.
from my parents. Like I was surprised. I thought, oh, maybe I shifted down a little. I got out. I walked a really, really long time. And I was like, where are we? Like, how far? And it's just an image of, you don't even notice it. It's so subtle. But unless you're intentional about going in the direction or staying in the place you want to be, the tide of Christmas, the tide of all of the things everybody else is doing,
Yep.
the power of just what's in our culture,
Yep.
of what the culture will say is priority, will just, and it won't even be aggressive. It'll just
Right.
sweep you along a certain path.
Yep.
That unless you create this space to be intentional about what is important to me during the season, what is important to me as a parent for our family, you'll just go along with the current. And so the other image that I want to say is, just take some time. If you are already listening to this podcast, kudos to you. That is creating that space. It doesn't have to be long to just think about and maybe talk with your spouse and partner. How do we want to prepare? And I just have one more thought just to really pitch the power of preparation. Is someone shared with me, it's like that image of a slingshot. Because I'm someone that's always busy and always going. And I find it hard to create space to plan and to
Right.
think, because it's like, I'm just going to keep on going and I'm planning as I'm going, and you're just like hamster wheeling. But someone had said it's like a slingshot. Like, you pull that slingshot back, you're slowing down, you're going backwards, you're not going forwards, it feels like. But the more you do that, and that can create some tension, but when you let go of that slingshot, you can propel even further.
Right.
So the idea is to slow down so that you can go further, faster, in a direction that you actually want to be going. So some questions you can ask, some practical questions in terms of what do we mean by preparing mentally, maybe with your spouse. I encourage you to take 5-10 minutes. It doesn't have to be all of these questions. You may also have a completely different set of questions, but some questions you could ask to prepare, and to you and your partner and your husband or wife can prepare for your Christmas season is, what values do we want to prioritize as a family during this Christmas season? What are some ways it could be a challenge to uphold these values, and how could we mitigate that? Just spend 5 minutes just even talking about that. Another question is, how can we ensure that we spend quality time together as a family during the holidays? What activities or experiences do we want to prioritize? It's just pause, couple minutes, just talk about that. What are our expectations for the holiday season, and are they realistic? How can we communicate and manage expectations? So between Sam and I, we might say, oh, there is these 2 weeks before Christmas, this and this and this is happening with me at work. So it's going to be a little tense. So what can we do about it? Because I probably won't be able to talk a lot about Christmas then. Should we talk about it now?
Right.
Should we talk about it later? Another question, how can we ensure that we prioritize self-care and rest during the busy holiday season? Are there specific activities we can scale back to reduce stress? Another question, how can we involve our children in the decision-making process for holiday plans? So these are just examples of questions you can be asking as a parenting team.
Yep.
There could be other questions, but the whole point is not necessarily to ask this specific set of questions, but just to create that space to be able to just think about what do we want, what do we
Yeah.
value, and not just get swept away by
so
the current.
Good. That's so good. Producer Chris,
Yes, sir.
Grace is pretty smart.
She's amazing. She is.
Why am I here?
She's brilliant.
She said so much. I got like 2 little bullet points. But one of my thoughts, Grace, you're sitting there talking, I'm going, yeah, wow, yes. Good night. Yep.
Good night.
Well, because it goes back to our whole premise for our podcast, right? When it comes to parenting, intentionality.
Yes.
And hardly anything good happens by accident, right?
Right.
So the more intentional you are, the more likely you are to kind of raise the kids that you hope to raise.
Right.
There's no guarantees.
Yeah.
Whatever your thoughts about Christmas, the type of Christmas you want to have as a family, the more intentional you are. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to hit the bullseye.
Yes.
But you probably have a better shot when you plan ahead, you're intentional. And everything you were talking about was just intentionality. I will add to that that be intentional, but embrace the mess ups. And years ago, Focus on the Family, which is this massive, they were maybe not as massive as they used to be, but this huge ministry all around helping families, parents, families. They did a survey where they surveyed people probably a little bit younger than all of us, but like, what were your best family memories growing up? And the runaway winner was camping and road trips.
Oh.
The runaway winner.
That's
So it wasn't the
interesting.
luxury resort.
Yeah.
It was camping and road trips. And then they followed that up with like, well, explain that. And it was because something always went wrong. And we had to overcome it as a family. So it was like, remember that year we went camping and we didn't have, it snowed and we didn't have snow clothes because it wasn't supposed to snow. Or remember the year that our car broke down 15 times on the way to Yosemite, and every single time we had to, and Dad had to take the
push
bike off the bike rack and ride it to go get gas. And they had these like logged into their mind these memories. At the time, maybe not so awesome, but in hindsight, that's like, oh, those are our favorite family memories. And so as you prepare for Christmas, parents, be intentional. Like everything Grace just talked about, yes, that will help you maybe a little bit more realistically have the Christmas that you imagine with your family. But stuff goes wrong. You're right. The ham gets burnt, or the in-laws say weird things. My in-laws never say weird things. I don't know
Just
why.
to clarify,
I don't know where
for
that
the
came.
record,
That was just, that was just an example.
Generic in-laws.
Yes. Generic in-law, right? And things go wrong. Your kids they're not as thankful as you think they should be about the gifts and all whatever it is, right?
Right.
That's okay. It's okay. Oftentimes the best memories are forged out of the things that go a little bit haywire in the moment.
I love that.
My first real thought, that was just kind of a freestyle off of everything awesome you were saying. But what I logged in my mind and what I wrote down on my phone is, it's such a cliche. It's such a cliche, but as you prepare for Christmas, remember the reason for the season. It's not remember the reason for the day. Sometimes we just, on Christmas Day, we pause to remember the birth of Christ.
Right.
But, and part of it's, our commercialized culture and everything, but we've created a season around Christmas. And man, as we get caught up in the chaos of all of that, if you can parents just remind yourselves and your kids and your spouse, okay, this is all about the birth of Jesus. This is all about spending time as a family, celebrating that. That might help, it might help kind of rein in some of those expectations.
Right.
Maybe all of these expectations aren't quite as important, or if things go wrong, it's okay, because the reason for the season isn't perfect gifts.
Right.
The reason for the season isn't the perfect meal. The reason for the season isn't, fill in your blank. But if we can just kind of remember the reason for the season, I think that'll help that most important part not get lost in all in all the chaos. So sometimes we've heard something a million times and it just becomes white noise. Reason for Jesus is the reason for the season. Oh yeah, whatever. I got to buy my toys for my kids.
Yeah.
I'll think about Jesus being the reason for the season when I get to my Christmas Eve church service at midnight. And the reason I go to the Christmas Eve service at midnight isn't because that's when I really can focus in on Jesus, it's because I don't have time until midnight to
Right.
make my way to the Christmas Eve service, right? And it just becomes another part of this crazy, chaotic loop. So if we can maybe almost a month before Christmas, so okay, I'm going to remind myself what this is
Yeah.
all about, that might help.
And you know what is powerful about that is it's often those cliche things, the things that people tune out to because they've heard it so much, that actually is the most profound impact on your life in a beneficial way. It's just that we don't do it.
Right.
You know, it's like those things, it's a cliche for a reason. Stop and smell the roses is I don't know, what is it? The phrase for a reason. And if we could actually do it,
yes,
your life as a parent for your family would actually be so much better. It's just because I think that the downside is because we have access to so many good resources.
Right.
And you know, we're fed so many good things that it's just easy to be like, if I heard it, that's the same as living it.
Right.
And it's not.
Yes.
And so if we can just make that pitch,
good.
take this time and lean into that. Another thing, I only had one other thing for parents as they think about, okay, Christmas is coming up. How can I prepare? We talked about, you know, our mindset and really just leaning into what's really important and not getting caught up. But the other thought that I had was to look at your traditions and to lean into the treasure of traditions. I was trying to do a alliteration.
Alliteration, thank you.
The treasure of tradition.
It's
The power of preparation.
That's like a double alliteration because it's the first two letters. Treasure, tradition.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's like a double ding ding
Ding ding.
Yeah.
I know. So this is something that research does show that traditions and these rituals in families really play a really critical and crucial role in shaping the emotional well-being of individuals and families. So they've done a lot of different studies on traditions that it seems like traditions act as a source of stability. Like that's the role that it could play in many times in terms of the benefit emotionally and psychologically. It creates a source of stability, connection. It creates a sense of like identity and a belonging within a family unit. And all of those things can contribute to emotional security. Children who grow up with consistent family traditions and rituals there are some studies that show that they tend to experience higher levels of emotional security. And that could be because maybe traditions provide a sense of like predictable structure and routine and a sense of safety and stability. And those are all things that have been shown to be important for child development. There's also positive associations, you know, that can contribute to children as they grow up having positive, warm memories with family in their life and their bonding, and that they can take that with them as they become adults. And so that's just another thing that I wanted to say is if parents are thinking about, okay, how can I prepare, is to look at what traditions do you have? What traditions do you want to continue to do? Or maybe it's, well, we don't really have that many traditions. And maybe it's asking around, asking friends, what traditions do you have? And you could experiment. You could test certain things out. I will say, make sure as you do this, though, don't fall into the trap of comparing your traditions
The
with
trap of traditions.
Oh,
that's
trap.
That's a triple
That allows you to-
TRA.
Yeah.
That's TRA, the trap of traditions.
Trap of. Is there a T word for comparing? Trap of. Anyway.
No.
Terrible.
Terrible comparison traditions anyway. Because again, back to what you were saying earlier too, Kurt, this is not about performance. Like preparation and really getting the meaning out of Christmas is not about like, oh no, now Kurt and Grace and Chris said, I need to have the perfect tradition. It's not that. I mean, I will tell you, our family has tried certain traditions that we thought were a really great idea and they just were a bust. Like one of them, I heard from someone, they said, we wrap baby Jesus and it's the last gift under the tree. And at the end of all the gift wrap opening, we open up baby Jesus and say, this is the best gift of all. And we're like, it's just like kind of like ritual. And I was like, that sounds cute. Let's do it. And we tried it once and then it was like, just was a dud. It didn't work for us, and that's okay.
But for some families, that would be an awesome tradition.
And it sounds awesome
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
you know? And so, and then also too, I think like, it doesn't have to be always consistent too in the way that it's not picture perfect. Like growing up as a pastor's kid, like Christmas seasons just changed all the time depending on when the Christmas services were and if it's Christmas morning or if it's Christmas evening.
Right.
And our family, I think being immigrant parents, like we never did Santa. So we just always, me and my sister, we just always knew that person at church wearing the Santa suit was fake. Like we just,
yeah, you
but
weren't.
there was never like a Santa gift from Santa. Like we
Right.
just had gifts mostly from church members. And like my dad would take out his, big video camera, put it on a tripod, and we would open up presents in front of the video camera, sing a hymn. And then that was it. But we had so much fun. Like I just remember it being so much fun, even if for our family, we didn't have Santa. Right. And so to other families, like Santa's a big deal, or that mad mystery, that magic, leaving out the cookies. But again, you don't have to compare. It's really not, it doesn't have to be some high standards. The point of this is connecting with your family.
Yep.
It's just creating a space where
Yep.
you're having fun together. And so not to lose that inside of the traditions or give yourself too much pressure.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good. Well, yes and yes and yes to traditions. You know what's interesting, producer Chris and Grace? I just had like this legit epiphany of why I think I don't want to decorate early.
Oh,
You're sitting there talking about traditions. I'm listening, and I suddenly had this boom. My mom,
okay.
when we were growing up, my mom used to talk all the time about how her tradition as a kid, her and her two brothers and their parents, they would go on Christmas Eve
Okay.
to get a Christmas tree and decorate it together.
Oh, wow.
That was their Christmas Eve tradition. And I always just, as you were talking, I'm going, oh my gosh. I suddenly remember thinking how cool that, when I was a kid, I remember thinking that's awesome going and picking out your tree on Christmas Eve.
It's the excitement and the thrill.
And maybe that's why in my mind, I'm like, let's just wait till Christmas
Yeah.
Eve.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go right
we can
before.
do all this on Christmas Eve and it would be awesome and
Right.
wonderful. I'm gonna ask
interesting.
Rachel. I'm gonna tell Rachel we should reintroduce that tradition.
Right. You guys could have that conversation. You may get denied.
I might.
But
Yeah, she's not gonna like
Well, here's my thoughts, because honestly, we didn't compare notes. I'm like, yep, traditions. Here's what I would add to that is parents, whether you know it or not, you are creating Christmas traditions. You are. And so let's create ones that we want to create, or, let's pay attention to the little things we do that our kids love and turn that into a tradition. Right?
Yeah.
Like maybe you realize my kids loved that one year we made homemade cinnamon rolls.
Right.
Okay, well then make homemade cinnamon rolls every year, because that kind of becomes this tradition. It's just this easy tradition.
yeah.
But you're forming traditions, and some of those traditions may not be super healthy
Right.
or appropriate, right? So my mind goes to parents. You can't control everything, but maybe you have a choice to. Is the tradition that your kids remember always? Yeah, my parents were so stressed out. Like Christmas season was just, my mom was always frantic. She was, the 2 days leading to Christmas was like total chaos. And I remember my parents would, like some of the worst fights my parents ever got into were like the day before Christmas, when all the crazy.
Yeah.
Well, if that happens regularly, that's a tradition that you've just embedded into your kid's mind, right? Or the tradition of, my dad, all he cared about was getting the Christmas tree lights perfectly aligned. When I was in college, I lived with this family. This family let me live with them for free, and the dad was a business owner, and they lived in a super nice part of town. And they went to our church, and they gave me a room to live in for free. So
that's nice.
it was great.
Yeah.
And one year he said, "Hey, Kurt, your job's to hang the Christmas lights." All right. So he went out there with me, and he made me this huge house.
Okay.
And every individual light had to have a staple on each side of the light, so the light was perfectly straight.
This is another reason we're
Perfectly
uncovering.
straight. That is another
This
reason.
is another.
Yeah.
We're uncovering Kurt's
Grace.
resistance
That'd make
to
you
You're
Christmas
right.
lighting.
Christmas.
You're right. That's another reason.
Should you be laying down right now?
So yes, I'm about 30 seconds away from starting to cry. But like the tradition of,
Right.
well, all I remember is my dad insisted the Christmas lights be perfect.
Right.
Is that the tradition we want to create?
Right.
Right.
a good point.
Versus my mom made cinnamon rolls every year and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Or we wrapped Jesus and he was the last gift we opened.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. That's fine. I'm not gonna what. The best traditions are the traditions that your kids and your family resonate with.
Exactly.
And it can be buying the Christmas tree on Christmas Eve. I suppose there's a family in the world who their kids love stapling the Christmas lights perfectly straight, right? Like
Right.
maybe that okay.
It brings some joy. Yeah.
That's the tradition is like taking pride in your decorations.
Right.
You know, whatever the tradition, maybe our
Just
tradition
watching
is.
a movie.
Our tradition is everybody, the grown-ups, our adult kids, they all still come over on Christmas morning,
Yeah.
or not on Christmas morning anymore now that they're married. But stockings for us are a big deal.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
all about the stockings,
that's
and
fun.
so much so that when the kids got married, they're like, "We're moving out, but you're
still giving me a stocking?"
I still get a stocking." And Rachel and I are like, "Oh, yes, we are."
Oh, that's so
Yes,
sweet.
so they come over at 2:00 on Christmas, and there's a stocking for
There's
them,
like,
right?
where's our stocking?
So it's just whatever
Yeah.
they are. You are creating traditions, whether you know it or not. So maybe be intentional about creating the traditions that you think you hope to create within your family. Well, everybody, that is episode 1
Yes.
of Parenting Through the Christmas Season. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please share this podcast with your friends. This little podcast is picking up steam. We're like the little engine that could. Chris, producer Chris, thank you for that play out. You can you can subscribe, and we gotta make sure, if you're watching, I'm holding this up, but if you're listening, in the show notes, or if you go to Saddleback or to onpurposeparents.com, we have created, producer Chris has created this
great.
really cool Advent journey with your family. And Advent is in just a few days. Advent
it starts in a few days.
So if you would like to do a little Advent exercise, an Advent journey with your family, in the show notes, you can download it. You can go to onpurposeparents.com and download it. And it's just a little gift from producer Chris
Thank
to
you
all
so
of
much,
you.
producer Chris.
This is fantastic.
It is. I'm excited.
Yep.
He said that
And-
copy you're holding is mine, so I'm
Oh,
going
it
to
is?
take it
Oh,
home.
gotcha.
Yeah.
There you go. Everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.